So what's the best open world solo build without having Soto, the expansion Secrets of the Obscure? This is the question we want to answer today in form of a tier list. As always, special shout out to all my supporters in GW2 Patreon. And now let's jump straight in. Again, this is my personal take on the matter. I try to be as objective as possible, but of course I might be biased to something. Soto is a very important expansion actually for solo builds because there are really, really good relics in Soto, and the weapon proficiency and also some weapons that were added with Soto are actually really, really good for solo builds. So you will lose quite a bit of power by not having Soto. I will mention here when a build uses Spear, because that's not from Soto, so in general that would be good in this tier list. But if you don't have Soto and Chancellor Vials, then the build might fall off even harder, so keep that in mind. So we have the classic tier from S to D tier. Keep in mind, every single build can be played in the open world and will succeed with an open world dedicated build. Even core classes can be quite good with that. Keep that in mind. But of course, S and A tier builds are way better than others. So let's start with the core classes. I would say core Mesmer is just not that good. I would put it in D tier. The same goes for core Revenant and core Elementalist. They are just quite weak, especially if you compare to the other expansion elite specs. And you can play them, don't get me wrong. D tier doesn't mean it's unplayable, it's just way worse than others. Just get it out of the way fast. Necromancer, core Ranger, and I would say maybe let's go over the core classes. I put them in first and then I'll tell you everything that I think about them. Something like this. So Necromancer, Ranger, and Thief can be played decently as a core class, even without Soto, of course. And I would say those three are a little bit better. Probably core Guardian is actually even an A tier. The problem is core Guardian really needs to use pistol, in my opinion, to make it even better. So you lose quite a lot with being without Soto. And also the relics hurt quite hard. Core Engineer is only really good if you play it with Spear. If you don't play it with Spear, yes, you can play it pistol, but then I think it falls off quite a bit. Spear is really, really strong. So if you don't have Chante Vials, Core Engineer goes down. And core Warrior is also not that good. It depends a bit. It is decent. It's better than I would say most of the C tier classes that we have for now, but it's low B tier, high C tier, something like that. Let's leave it here for now and be only core Guardian because that's the one that is actually quite well working. The others are decent and those are just not that good. But that's it for the core classes. I think it's more interesting to talk about the elite spec. So let's start with Guardian. I already mentioned Guardian doesn't have access to the pistols, and those are really good. Those are really, really good. So the only one that is not affected is the powered Dragon Hunter build. This is just, you can use it, it's the same. But the problem with it is, I'm not joking, is yes, it doesn't use pistols, but it doesn't get the Sakiros relic. And that's like the most sustained that you can get. So you run Defender now or something like that, and you would be okay. But it falls off drastically, and that's why it's in C tier actually. Without Sakiros, you lose so much of its sustain and stuff, it's really bad. You can't run, like I said, Defender Relic and you get some replacements and get some healing on block, but you don't have that crazy amount of block in the baseline, and that means that you have to get some utility skills in there, and then you lose some DPS again, so C tier for me. Willbender and Firebrand, on the other hand, lose the pistols, but don't get access to a crazy DPS relic, so that means that the relic gets worse, so they have less DPS, they lose the pistols, they get worse because of that. That's why I would say you can play both of them. They are decently fine to play as a Pondi build for the most part, Celestial, but they lose quite a lot of their utility. So I personally would put them actually in B tier because of that. High B tier, but sadly not as good. You can clearly see that there are some builds that are really like typically in S tier that fall down because they lose like half of their kit without having Soto. Keep that in mind. So let's go next to the Warrior elite specs. Warrior is interesting because Warrior has two power builds that I would use typically, Bladestone and Spellbreaker. So let's start with Spellbreaker. I would say Spellbreaker loses a Kyros relic, which is a bummer, but you have some healing back in the baseline kit. You lack protection uptime, and you can use a meditation relic that gives now protection on it, which is a Chante Vials relic. So if you have Chante Vials, you could run that, so it's in B tier here. And Bladestone gets the new Mistburn relic that gives you might and stuff. That's also quite nice, especially if you run with the trait that gives you health and endurance on might get. So I would say Bladestone is also a decent pick here. I would say Bladestone is actually the least of those that we have right now in terms of how it suffers, because it actually only loses Sakiros relic, which is not even the best in slot thing anymore. So I would say Bladestone is actually A tier. Yeah, I think Bladestone is one of the best ones that we have for now. And then we have Spellbreaker. And it just uses the relic. It really just uses the fractal relic, which is the DPS increase of this build. You can use a lot of other relics that give decent amount of utility as well. So use some damage, but it's still, in my opinion, high A tier, if not low S tier build. Let's put it for now in high A tier, because it lacks a little bit of condic lenses in the base kit, but damage output and even invulnerability in the kit makes it actually, I would say, high A tier, even maybe S tier even. By the way, if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. And let's go to Revenant. Revenant is very interesting because all 3 Revenant elite specs can use the spear, so you can be really fine with if you have Chanter Wilds. If you don't have it, you have to run shortbow. However, shortbow, you only get access to Vindicator and Herald with shortbow if you have Soto. So that means that Renegade is the only class that actually can be played without Soto and Chanter Wilds, because you can run the, so to say, shortbow mace combo, which is the most DPS option. So I would say Renegade is the one that suffers the least because it only loses the relic, which is a little bit of a DPSing loss, but still. So it's, for me, an S tier build. Extremely strong, crazy sustain, crazy damage, and you don't even need Soto and Chanter Wilds for it, so it's really good. On the other hand, like I said, you can run Spear on Vindicator and Herald, but if you don't have Spear, then you lose, so to say, the most damaging option from range, and you can only run Maces, so to say. Mace X is the damage combo, Mace Shield is defensive combo for both of them, and the problem is Vindicator is the damage relic. So for me, Vindicator falls off in B tier, whereas, or let's say low A tier rather. It's better I think it's still better than the B tier builds here. And then you have Herald. Herald, like I said, loses some ranged option and loses the, again, crazy good damage relics and stuff, but it's still okay. I think Herald is like the very brain off build, whereas Vindicator is the unkillable build and Renegade is the more aggressive version, and only the aggressive version is the one that doesn't get nerfed in that sense without having Soto. I think Herald, in my opinion, should be an A tier still, because you can still play it very decently and very effectively. Then we have Engineer. Engineer is really interesting because Engineer loses access to the Spear, and Spear is absolutely broken on Engineer. It's really, really good as a condi weapon. You can replace it with Pistol Shield, and you will be fine. However, you will lose on every single Engineer spec, you will lose the Relic. The Relic, you can get another Relic of course, but the Relic that we had there are obviously damage increases, so you lose damage quite a bit. So that, in my opinion, brings all Engineer specs down a bit, just baseline, because you lose the most aggressive stuff. They are not like the Guardian specs where you really miss the complete condi weapon for it for the most part, but it's still decent. I would say Holosmith would be in B tier, same as Scrapper. Mechanist goes in A tier. I would say Mechanist is still very good. Not as good as those two because it loses a little bit of the utility, but it's still a very good pick because you get the mech that gives some nice condi damage, you have Pistol with the range, you lose a little bit of damage and you are not that, so to say, safe with the CC and of your pistol and stuff, of your spear and crazy DPS on it, but it's still a very good pick. There might be an argument to put it still in S tier, to be honest, because it's very, very broken in my opinion. It's so safe. The other 2 Engineer specs are fun to play and really good, but they lose quite a lot of their damage, so it feels worse to play them. That's why they are on B tier. But don't get me wrong, everything in B or above is actually really well worth it playing. I would say C and D tier is like you challenge yourself a bit, but it's still doable. Then we have Thief. So Thief is interesting because we have Spectre, which is like not losing anything other than a relic slot. So I personally would say, or relic, DPS relic, I would say Spectre is for me an A tier pick. Easy A tier. It is almost the same build. It's really good. It's not as broken in terms of DPS as those 3, or let's say utility and stuff, but it's a very, very good Thief solo build, and it's by far, I would say, the best one, because Deadeye loses its relic, and that's quite a DPS loss. And Deadeye was already in a spot where you only played it because of its DPS. The sustain on Deadeye is good, but only if you can hit the enemy, and if you get hit by a very hard-hitting attack, you get punished very hard, because you need to evade all the time. That's the defense of this build. So I would say it gets hit quite hard. I think it's still an A tier pick for me, because it's only the relic that gets nerfed. You can still play the Dagger version, but it's worse in my opinion than Spectre for a lot of situations. Only in real try-hard situations where you want to get a speed run going on something, then this might be this pick. And even with Daredevil, you know, what can I say? It's just very bad in solo play. It doesn't have self-capabilities to buff itself, to heal crazy, and to have... It's just not that good. It's not made for that. It's a group build, not for a solo build. So Ranger has Soul Beast. You lose your offhand mace exit if you wanted to play this one as well. That's a little bit sad. I would say in general it just loses a little bit of its relic, but you can replace it with a damaging relic and you will be decently fine as well. So I would put it in A tier for me. Soul Beast is still a decent pick. Druid loses its DPS relic again, but you can still play it. It's still a decent pick. You don't lose any weapons for that because you play it as a Condi Druid. You can also play it as a Power Druid, but then you lose your maces as well because maces are from Soto. So I would say Condi Druid in A tier, Power Druid in B tier. I would put it there for now. And then we have Untamed. Untamed is like insane because yes, it loses the maces on a power build and therefore it's like quite bad, I would say. It's not like compared to the usual one, it's still a decent pick, but the Condi Untamed is like the only ranger build that is not nerfed at all. It's like absolutely unnerfed, untouched, easy S tier. Condi Untamed is such a safe pick, crazy DPS, crazy healing, crazy boons. It's really good. It's unnerfed without Soto, even without Chantal Wilds. It's really, really good. It's the only, let's say, only build on this list yet that is not nerfed at all, you know, not touched. Maybe with Bladezone, but those two are completely untouched. So that's why it's really good. Bladezone I would just put a little bit lower in terms of sustain and just general usefulness with CC and stuff and playability than Untamed. That's why it's an A tier, not because it's nerfed that much, you know, so keep that in mind. Then we have Mesmer. Mesmer doesn't have access to its daggers. The dagger in the main hand is like a really good weapon for a power build, because it's like really safe from range. So I would say because of the Sakuras nerf that all the classes got, because you can't play it without Soto and don't get any healing from it, means that power builds on Mesmer are dead because of that. And that means that Virtuoso, which is like the build where you really want to play it as a power build, is like sadly really bad. It falls off quite hard because of that. So even though you can play the dagger here, you don't get the healing from the Sakuras and it falls off quite hard. That's why it's in C tier, I would say. And we have Mirage. Condi Mirage is still completely fine. I'm not joking. You can still play it very, very well. So easy S tier, I would say. And then we have Condi Chronomancer. Condi Chronomancer, I would say, falls off because you can't get access to the Nurus relic. And that's really the big thing that helps you a lot here. So I would say it falls into A tier. You can still play it without the Nurus relic, but you lose quite a lot of damage output from it, and in general healing as well. So that means that you are a little bit worse. It's still a very good build, don't get me wrong, but I feel like Mirage is a little bit safer with this. Then let's go to Elementalist. Elementalist is also interesting because Elementalist loses access to the pistols. I personally don't like the pistols, so I never use them in a solo build. I think they are weird. So they don't lose a lot from that. They only lose the relics. They lose the power relic again with Sakuras. So typically you play them Condi anyway. I would say Condi Catalyst, so Celestial Catalyst with a hammer, is almost untouched. It just loses the Fractal relic and therefore it's also S tier. You know, it loses a little bit of DPS, but it's still absolutely broken. And hammer is really, really, really good with the buffs to it. It's just very good. And then we have Tempest. I think Tempest is like barely touched with not having Soto, but with the buffs to it, with the alacrity on the shout and stuff, it's actually, I would say, A tier. It's a really good pick. The overlords make it a little bit challenging in some encounters if you get hit a lot because of your long casts, but I think it's still a decent pick. And then you have Weaver. I think Weaver, you can play it, but I personally don't like Weaver in a solo build too much because the self-buffing capabilities are quite low, and that's for a solo build always a bad sign. So I personally would put it in high C tier, if not B tier, depends a bit who you asked. I personally don't like it too much, especially if you have access to Catalyst. Why would you pick a Weaver? So I would say C tier for me. And then we have Necromancer as the last class. Necromancer is, again, you can play it typically as a Condi. Reaper can be played as a power build. And Reaper is the only power build in this whole tier list where I would say you can even play it as a power build without the Sakuras relic. Because Sakuras is like on power builds, except Bladezone is really like a must. And on Reaper you actually don't need it. So you can still play the power Reaper version. So it's slightly worse. Whereas the Condi version is like completely untouched for the most part. You lose some relics there, yes, but you can still find replacements that are actually decently fine. So I would say Reaper is still an S tier. Really, really good build for soloing stuff. Just really, really good. And then you have Scourge, which loses its relic. Yes. And that's not that good, but you also lose the pistol from Harbinger, so that's also a bad sign. Reaper loses it as well, but in Reaper you can play Dagger main hand, you can play Scepter main hand, and you will be fine. On Scourge, however, if you don't have the pistol, you actually lose quite a lot of DPS. So I would say Scourge would normally be S tier, but with the nerfs to, so to say, not having pistol and having a worse relic, I would say Scourge is for me A tier. And Harbinger has access to the pistol because it comes with the pistol, but loses the relic, so it loses some DPS with it. And I would say it is because of that, and it's already quite squishy in the beginning. It has crazy DPS, but in terms of squishiness, I would say, and the loss of damage that it has, it goes into A tier. That's my tier list. You can see it's still very front-loaded. There are a lot of really good classes in S and A tier, and you can still play all of the classes without Soto. And it's really fun, in my opinion, to craft builds around Soto and without Chantay Wilds, because there are actually quite a lot of options that you lose because of that, but you can still make decent solo builds. But you can clearly see that Soto is the most impactful expansion in terms of how much crazy new stuff with relics and weapons that you got actually impact the solo builds. So let me know your takes on this tier list in general, on the meta, in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. Again, special shout out to my supporters on YouTube, Twitch and Patreon that help me keep the lights on. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.